Hi everyone and welcome to the channel. Today we're working on a forged finished Damascus Santoku. Santoku is a Japanese word that means three virtues or three uses. The three virtues the translation refers to are slicing, chopping and dicing, making a great all-purpose kitchen knife for a wide variety of tasks. And I'm excited to announce that I'll be giving this knife away to one of you. I'm really new to YouTube and the support I've received so far has been amazing. Learning from comments and trying new things has been awesome. So to show my appreciation for all of you, hang around to see how this one could be yours. So we'll be starting this one off by stacking 20 layers of 15 and 20 and 1084 high carbon steels. We're making a random pattern today, so it's pretty straightforward. We just need to alternate each layer, trying not to mix them up. I like to hit the edge of one of the steels with a little black paint so I can easily see which steel to put in next. With a few welds down each corner of the stack, I'll weld a work stick on and move over to the forge and start turning this into something. Now simply preheat your oven to... wait a minute, wrong video. But the theory is the same. Let's get the forge preheated and get our stack brought up to forge welding temperature. We're shooting for about 100 layers in this one. We'll go through the process a couple of times. We'll start by getting this one to a yellow heat and gently set the welds. After a few small squishes, we can start applying a bit more pressure and reducing the height of the stack into more of a long bar. With it all stretched out into our first billet, we can get this one ground off clean and restack it to increase the layer count. So I'll measure this one out and mark it into 5 clean pieces. I always lose a little bit on the end of the billets from where they don't stay square, but that's okay. We have heaps of steel here for the projects we have planned. And over to the bandsaw. The reason I like to use the bandsaw for cutting Damascus rather than an angle grinder is that the blade kerf is much thinner and we don't lose as much material from cutting the billet into pieces. With all the pieces cut, we'll pop them on top of each other and get them tack welded together with the MIG welder. Now that we have it all together, back into the forge to set the new rounder welds. Following the same process from earlier, we need to bring this one up to forge welding temperature, gently set the welds and start reducing down the stack into a manageable billet. The finish height of the billet isn't super important, but I do want to leave it a little thicker than normal at this stage, as I have something planned for the other half of this steel. That will be next week's video. With our Damascus billet forged down to size, I can cut it in half and start turning it into something more recognisable as a knife. Starting with forging down the material that will form our tang. Here, I have a press die that I've made for exactly this task. It tapers away on the backside so you can get a good pinch on the steel and it doesn't smush everything all over the place. With that done, I can move on to stretching out the material that will form the heel of the blade. I'm shooting for a heel height of about 50mm or 2 inch. It doesn't matter if it's a little taller, but no shorter as we need to leave clearance for our knuckles. We don't want to be punching our chopping board with every cut we make. And now to stretch out the blade. We're looking for a finished length of about 200mm or 8 inches. So using the drawing dies to make this a little faster, I'll stretch it out until we get it close to length. With the blade formed, I'll switch over to the other end of the steel and form the tang. Moving this little piece is always a little tricky for me. It heats and cools really quickly and doesn't take much to get out of whack on the press, but being nice and careful, that will be close enough. With the rough forging done on the blade, I'll switch over to the anvil to try and give this one a little shape. This is the weakest part of my knife making game, but I'm sure I can hide all my shortcomings with the grinder. I'll start off by straightening out the spine by tapping it down on what will become the cutting edge against the anvil. Then try to unsuccessfully drop the tip down just a little, but without much luck. But it's okay, I have enough blade length here if I need to cut a little off the end. With a few small hammer blows on the tang, we can leave this one to cool so we can set the profile on the grinder. Being as far from perfect as I am, thank God for grinders. I'll start by marking out the blade shape I'm looking for, using one of these super handy little markers that seem to be able to write on anything. I'll draw on a rough choil and set the total blade length, then mark out the tang area. I try to keep my tangs no shorter than 3" or 75mm in length inside the handle itself to leave a sturdy steel spine to glue our wood onto. Then trace in the tip. Now at this stage it's all really rough. I usually like to leave myself a rough line to grind up to and then kind of tweak everything until it feels about right. With everything marked out, I'll head to the grinder to cut everything up to the lines, ready to harden the blade. With all the forging done and the profile cut, I can get this one into the kiln for heat treatment. Now you could use your forge for this, but the kiln gives really high accuracy of temperature and a really even heat throughout the blade. So I'll bring it up to critical temperature, let it soak for a few minutes, and then get it into the quenching oil to make it harden. After hardening, this one will get a tempering cycle overnight, and in the morning we can start the grinding. For this one, we're going to leave a bit of forged texture along the spine of the knife. For me, this always seems to be a bit of a tricky point. Sometimes it can be difficult to get through all the grinding without any little slips that leave scratch marks in the natural looking forged area. But if we just take it slow, I'm sure we can get it done. So starting with 36 grit, I'll move up through the grits to 60 and 120 and finishing with an A100 Trizac. With the Trizac belt on, I'll switch over to the slack belt and round out the spine and choil area, so there are no sharp spots that will give the user a blister and try and help reduce those knife hand calluses. And here you can see where my limited hammering ability come back to get me. There was one miss hit with the hammer that resulted in a slightly deeper hammer mark that I couldn't get out from grinding without making the knife too thin. But it's there now, and I'm going to say it adds character or something. With the grinding all done, time for a bit of the least fun part of the process, the hand sanding. I'm not going to lie, it's a lot easier with the forged texture on top, but I'm still going to put some effort into hand sanding the forged area, just to make absolute certain that there isn't any loose forge scale or any other nasties that could flake off with time. So starting with 240 grit, we'll scrub this one down and get all the scratches running horizontally, and then move up to 400 and finish it all at 600 grit. The nice part about hand sanding Damascus is that the lines don't have to be as perfect as when you do a mono steel blade. The etching will help a lot to smooth everything out and give a really consistent finish. With the blade up to an acceptable finish, we can get to work on the handle. Here, we have a cool looking piece of double dyed box elder burl. I'll start by cutting off a small piece that will make up the bolster area of the handle with a miter saw. And then move over to the mill to cut a slot for the tang to poke through. Now for anyone who saw my last knife making video and cringed when I did this, you'll be happy to know that I finally have the right set of end mills for this job. So starting from the backside of the bolster material, I'll cut a slot all the way through. The end mill leaves a little clearance on the backside of the slot, which I'm not mad about. It seems to make it a little easier to get everything to sit nice and flush when we put the larger block on that will form the handle. After getting the bolster ready, I'll make the cavity in the handle block by drilling a couple of holes to the right depth and then remove the excess with a broaching tool. And with a little black G10 shim cut to give us a break in all that purple, our handle block is all set up and ready for epoxy after we've got all the blade finishing done. And now for the maker's mark. To add this little feature, we stick on our stencil with a piece of tape and lightly soak the pad of the head of the marking machine. Set the machine to etch, connect the earth wire, and gently dab over the stencil until we've reached our desired depth. Now that we have a nice deep etch, we can give this one a clean with a few strokes of 600 grit sandpaper. With all the finish work done, we can get a little peek at the pattern. So into the ferrochloride we go. I'll give this one about 4 cycles of 5 minutes, or until we just feel those little ridges with our fingernail. And it looks pretty cool. I love random pattern for the fact that no two blades are exactly the same, they all tell their own story of how they were born. After the acid's done its thing, we'll get it neutralised and all wrapped up before we move on to gluing the handle. And it's time to bring all these pieces together permanently. We'll start by mixing up a little G-Flex epoxy. I feel like I'm getting better at this. The addition of a little baking paper has been a game changer for me. It really helps with the pouring into the cavity we formed in the block earlier, and heaps easier to clean up afterwards. With the epoxy mixed up, I'll fill the handle cavity at the top and coat all the pieces that will go inside the handle with a thin layer. Then simply slide all the pieces together and get it into clamps. If you do a lot of hidden tang handles and have trouble gluing them up, these temporary clamps are a great little tool. I remember seeing them on a YouTube video years ago, and I'm sorry I can't recall whose video it was, but they make this job so much easier. Now for the messy part. I definitely recommend cutting off some excess with a bandsaw, but it's a tool I don't have. So instead I'll just grind away the wood that stands between me and my handle. Starting with 60 grit to remove the bulk of the material and give me my basic shape, I'll switch to a 220 J-Flex belt to round out any unwanted facets and start getting it nice and smooth. I've been working on this handle shape in my most recent videos and I'm definitely improving. This one feels great in my hand and provides great feedback. After getting the basic shape on the grinder, I'll smooth it out up to 1500 grit and give it a wet sand. Hitting the handle with a little water between the last few grits gives a really silky smooth handle. Now that we've finished the sanding, let's give it a buff with pink polishing compound. The pink compound does an awesome job of removing all those fine scratches and leaving a really clean finish. With the handle all finished up, it's time to whip up some coffee. I'll start by adding most of a jar of coffee to my very professional bit of pipe, keeping back just a little bit for me, and then pour in some boiling water. Now you know when you look back on something you do and think to yourself, why did I do that? This is one of those times. I poured the boiling water from a saucepan high enough to not catch it in the shot. So how much do you think will actually make it into the tube? 80%? 90%? Nope, I seem to spill a lot more than that. But we have enough to do what we need to do. So I'll give it a quick stir and leave it to cool. Once it's down to room temperature, I'll plunge the knife in and leave it to soak. After a few hours, the blacks are more black and it has a really cool contrast. And we're nearly there, just a few finishing touches. I'll give the handle a quick polish with carnauba wax to bring out all the natural figure and add a layer of protection to the wood that's food safe and easier to replace when required. For once, I actually think I've used close to the right amount of this stuff. I usually sploob it everywhere, but today seems to be my day. This has been a really cool project to work on, and I'm excited to be able to give this knife away to one of you. I mentioned at the start of this video that I was going to give this knife away. To have a shot at getting your hands on this one-of-a-kind Damascus Santoku, it's simple. All you need to do is be a subscriber to the channel, follow us on Instagram, give the video a like and leave a comment down below. I'll announce the winner on the 25th of February on my Instagram, link in description, and I'll pin the winning comment in the comments section. For all the terms and conditions of the giveaway, I'll pop it all in the description below. Thanks for your support everyone, our journey has only just begun. See you on the next one.